When it comes to AI, as you said, right, the difference between this bubble and other bubbles is that there's something real and tangible in terms of the products, the revenues, and the profits that you can gain from it. Even before Microsoft announced what they were doing in terms of charging people an incremental, I think $30 is what they've announced, you always realize, whether it's your organization or my organization, the depth that they have of penetration, their ability to price for it is going to be there. So when you look across companies, other companies like Adobe, for example, with Firefly have announced other things that they do. What we're looking at is what are the companies, whether you're purely in technology, whether you're in the service-oriented side, do you have the distribution, the customer reach, where the incremental benefit and the cost that you charge to a consumer means that both sides can make profits? So we definitely see that happening, and I think that's the reason that when we look at AI, we say, yes, there is potentially some type of bubble happening, but there's a real core to the bubble that is providing services and revenue and profits, not 20 years in the future, but potentially as early as the next couple of years.
This is going to require a whole heap of capex, both from the internal capex of companies perhaps having to pay for new systems because you need the required protocols to be able to run all of this large language model and anything that's going to get added on. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, even though you're going to get those gains, it's going to be a big cost for a lot of companies to be able to access all of this AI. Do you think that comes at the risk of any short-term growth? Because, in the integration phase, as opposed to then, the benefit phase of then having all of these systems in place and, cutting your cost base with headcount or whatever it ends up being. But for the next 18 to 24 months, not everyone's going to be the provider of the service. There's going to be a lot of companies that are going to be the ones that are trying to implement the service.
I suspect what we're going to see there is, in some sense, the strong or the big getting stronger and bigger. So when you think about the amount of capex that's got to be put in to generate large language models, no one knows the exact amount to develop ChatGPT, etc. But between hardware, people, software, you're talking anything between 50 to hundreds of millions of dollars. So realistically, there's only a few companies that can do that, which is why I think we've seen the likes of Microsoft, Google, etc. being in the forefront of that. And it's interesting when you talk about the amount of capex. We've tried to do analysis around when NVIDIA says that this market is a $33 billion market that could be 50 or 60 over the next couple of years. How does that tie in with the type of capex budgets that have been announced by the likes of Meta and Google and Amazon, etc.? And there is some directionality in there. But what you can say is probably within those capex budgets, there's an element of these companies deciding to focus on what is likely to be more productive and return enhancing over the next few years than before. The simple example of compare and contrast would be, we've had this discussion before on what was the investment for the metaverse and what were the revenues or what could Facebook do with that. If you think about the amount of capex that they have first cut in terms of what they're developing for the metaverse, now, of course, as they ramp back on, arguably, some of the pre-existing capex numbers could be diverted towards their AI programs, and the incremental amount will still be profitable. The second thing I think that's really important is when this capex is being spent, they can use that, as Microsoft is doing, to immediately start monetizing by providing services to customers. And the idea is not every large company is going to develop their own large language model. It simply won't make sense. So in the end, my suspicion, our suspicion, is that you're going to have a lot of large language models developed by a few players, whether it's Alphabet, whether it's Microsoft, whoever, and provide that as a service to other companies, whether you're Costco, whether you're Walmart, etc. And that's some way that we can actually talk about monetizing the AI capex investment. So is it an incremental capital cost? Yes. For many companies, it could be a combination of incremental but also diverting existing capital costs, i.e. if you put in order for a few thousand NVIDIA A100s because of your metaverse plans, you still need those GPUs in order to develop your large language models.